Hello everyone, JohnTrigger12 back here again with another video. Now today I'm giving you another top 5 pick on something personal that I personally actually like and giving my reasons as to why they're on my list. Now before I get started, I like to say that obviously this video is very subjective. It's my personal pick, it's my personal opinion, so obviously not a lot of you will not agree with this, and it's I'm personally okay with it, so feel free to comment your personal pick and your reasons as to why they're different from mine. Now, personally, I like Batman. He's my fucking favorite superhero slash comic book character of all time, and that's why he's on this top 5 pick. And the personal topic of hand is obviously my personal top 5 best representations of Batman. Batman was created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane post-Superman's success. Now, obviously, Batman's has a long history in the comics, live-action film, video games, and animation, and TV. So, obviously, there's a lot of room and a lot of ground to cover. But basically, I'm just going to give my personal favorite representations, and anybody who feels different can obviously, as I said, feel free to leave theirs. Now let's get started on my number 5. If I had to pick it, it has to be a tie, and I know it's kind of a cheat, but it just goes right down to it. It's a tie between Tim Burton's 1989 Batman movie slash Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. Now I know a lot of people, I know you're going to be like, The Killing Joke is more of a Joker story, dude. It's not a Batman story. I get it. But at the end of the day, it's a Batman story, and it's an epic one. And it's one of the main inspirations for Tim Burton's 89 Batman. If you watch 89 Batman, it's basically Alan Moore's Killing Joke. It's essentially the same story, just, change a little things afterwards, and take away, like, the importance of the Gordon family and just leave it as Batman versus Joker and just let it go. Essentially, 89 Batman is more of a nostalgic reason as to why he's on my top 5. I was at odds as to whether or not I would put on my top 5 because I grew up with 89 Batman like most comic book fans who grew up with like 60s Adam West and various other Batmans, but I just grew up with 89 Batman. He was just, Michael Keaton as Batman was just awesome. He just represented Batman so amazingly. But when you watch it now, it's just very hard to make that decision as to whether or not he really is the iconic and best representation of Batman. I mean, just look at it. It just because, and I'm not saying because old shit sucks. I love old shit. I'm a good nostalgic fan, but at the end of the day, it kind of just doesn't really hold up as others do. And The Killing Joke is just one of my top Batman comic book stories, and I know there's probably a lot of decision making as to whether or not it's a part of the official storyline, but essentially seeing as how Barbara Gordon does get shot and paralyzed for the majority of her life, and that parallels with her actual comic book character becoming the Oracle, I guess you can pretty much guess that it is canon, so it makes sense. And The Killing Joke is just awesome. It's just one of my favorite Joker slash Batman stories that represent the dark Caped Crusader. So let's move on and go to my number 4, which has to go to none other than the Batman Arkham games. I just love the Arkham series. They've done an amazing job at creating not only like a good lore, but just making you feel like you can be Batman. There's a lot of people who go out and say like, "Oh, this is great representation of Batman. This makes me feel like Batman. This is the reason why on Halloween I'm Batman." Arkham games does that, but they even go way further than anything else. They not only make you feel like Batman, they make you feel like the fucking world's greatest detective, which Batman is in the comics. Originally, he's the world's greatest detective. Where they get like theories from like Sherlock Holmes and just make him be like pre-battle he thinks everything out and just like has an inner monologue, and you get to follow his inner monologue just like in the cartoons and comics. So the Arkham games is, I mean, like, obviously a lot of people can disagree. You sure could. I mean, there's been a long line of video games dedicated to Batman. Batman's been in everything video game related, but the Arkham games, you have to admit, best represent Batman than any other video game franchise. And they're just fucking awesome. But let's move off of that and go to my number 3, which has to go to another comic book series slash comic book, which goes to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns, I know, may not be canon to a lot of people, and go with the original storyline of the Batman comic book series, but Dark Knight Returns is just a badass story. It's just so fucking cool and inspired, and just like The Killing Joke, inspired a lot of Batman movies. I mean, if you look at 89 Batman all the way to Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy especially, you can see where Frank Miller's work heavily inspired David S. Goyer's work and Tim Burton's stylistic style in the Batman movie franchise. It's just an amazing book. I mean, it just tells this epic, cool story of Batman. Like, just doesn't really even give a shit anymore. Gotham's going to shit. He's old. He's fucking broken. He doesn't even have a real good life anymore. He's retired, and he just dons the Dark Knight again and just goes out and starts fighting crime and faces off against the mutants, and the Joker comes back, and it's just an epic story of just craziness. It's just something that obviously only Frank Miller could think up, and Frank Miller is just an icon in Batman just in general. I mean, like, if you look at the stuff he did in Batman, it's just awesome, and just like the whole theory between the Batman-Superman relationship, completely redefined their relationship from then on, and more than likely will inspire future movies like the Man of Steel sequel. Obviously, it's just a badass story, and definitely needs to go on anybody's list of top 5 best representations of Batman history. But let's move off of that and move on to my number 2, which has to go down. And it goes right down to Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. I know what you're about to say. A little cliche for you, huh? But yes, I just had to really give it down to him. I mean, like, I know it's a realistic take on the Dark Knight, but at the same time, it kind of fits. And it does inspire a lot of other movies. I mean, like, if you look at Man of Steel, the new CW stuff, I mean, it kind of fits, with superheroes of today. A realistic take isn't really that bad of a fucking approach, and with Batman, it just fits perfectly, and I think he did an amazing job at directing and creating a good new lore to the Batman saga. I mean, obviously, the Batman mythos has been tainted various times over the years, with the 60s and 70s, with all that goofiness, and then not to mention the Schumacher series, but at the end of the day, the Dark Knight trilogy definitely redefines Batman. It really brings him back into the way he should be, which is the Dark Knight. And I just really love fucking Bale's performance. I know it's at sometimes it gets kind of comedic, like his voice and whatnot, but at the end of the day, he's definitely the first physically superior version of Batman and physically adequate, I would say, version of Batman that we've gotten in recent years, because usually they would just get an actor and put him in a muscle suit, or just get like a stunt double and put him in the suit and just let him do whatever. But this was the first time where they actually got an actor to make him physically look like Batman and make him do his own stuff. And I really appreciate when movie and filmmakers actually do that nowadays, because it's kind of just a bitch move when you just have a muscle suit to make you look like Batman when you're not actually Batman out of the suit. So at the end of the day, I just really had to give it up to the Dark Knight trilogy. It's definitely my personal favorite in the film series of Batman and in the Batman mythos, so to speak. And I just had to give it up to them. But before I give my number 1, let me give you some personal picks of mine that best represent Batman that didn't get on the list. Obviously, there's the weekly to monthly comic book series that consistently get made. I know there's tons and tons of comics to name, but right off the bat, but just if you're going to be a Batman fan, you definitely have to go out to your local or far distant comic book store to fucking check it out, because Batman is an amazing superhero to check out. Another one would have to be Adam West as Batman in the 1960s. I know it's a little too goofy, and it's like, Jesus Christ, really, dude? I know I didn't really grow up with the Adam West Batman, which is probably one of the main reasons as to why I'm not a huge fan of it, and why it's not on my list. But essentially, I do have a good respect for it. And also, I would have to, I would have to give it up to Ben Affleck, but at the same time, we have yet to see him as Batman, so I can't really judge him or put him on any type of list, so I would have to be on the fence and wait until that happens. But moving off of that, let's get into my number one, which has to go to the Batman animated series. You just have to give it up to Batman animated series, I mean, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and everybody else who worked on the series and continue to work in the DC animated universe just a great job at bringing the fantasy and realism and coolness of Batman into the front lines of television and the big screen, so to speak. Just an awesome fucking cartoon. It was definitely something that I grew up with and really made me feel like I was Batman, and definitely my personal favorite of Batman anything. And plus, Kevin Conroy's voice as Batman, he is Batman. I just love Kevin Conroy as Batman. He's definitely my first pick of being Batman out of anybody. I don't really give a fuck. It just is. But, guys, that's going to be it. I've been rambling way too long, and I'm just going to have to end it here. And personally, all I have to say is that's been my personal pick of the best / my favorite representations of Batman. There's been a long fucking history of Batman, so obviously there's a lot of representations of the Caped Crusader, so obviously a lot of people may not agree with my list, so if you don't agree, feel free to comment and just give your own personal list and why they're your best representations of Batman. And I can't wait to see future actors and future creators to come up with new storylines and representations of Batman. And that's all I have to say. And I'm going to have to end it here. And thanks for anybody who watches this and continues to watch. And I hope you enjoyed.